Board of Education, please join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have just returned from closed session where we discussed conference with labor negotiator, NTA and CSAA, conference with labor negotiator NUMA, and conference with labor negotiator contracted management, the chief business official. We also discussed legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and existing litigation. We have now resumed to open session, and we would look for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I second. And as usual, I'm not logged in. Please give me a moment. Okay, please vote. Four ayes. Thank you. The agenda is approved. Next, we move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Thomas, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I would like to provide a little bit of an update on a couple of items. Let me get my report out here. Is Sierra here? Not yet? I'll wait. She might show up towards the end. Let's start with this one. This Saturday is Newark Days. Tell me the theme for Newark Days again, Shar. It's a Wizard's World, and our motto for this year's parade is Wizards of Learning. So I want to remind everyone to come out this Saturday and join us for the Newark Days Parade. Our schools will be represented, board members will be represented, district. Get your Harry Potter stuff out of the closet or wherever you have it, and please join us. But I thought that was a cool prop. So more to come on that. I also wanted to share that we had our facility master plan kickoff meeting, the leadership kickoff meeting, and went well. We're working with ADIS group coordinating district-wide visioning workshop. We talked with site principals to see when they felt there was a good day and date to do this, and part of it was making sure we had parent involvement and engagement, and principals agreed that having their site councils involved would be very beneficial. They countered with a proposal of October 22nd to have this during a school day. This would allow for site admin, teachers, and staff to participate, and we're working with Ed Services to try to make that happen so that everyone's involved in that workshop, which is about a 7-hour workshop. It's a full day of work. This would be an all-day workshop. We're coordinating details. We'll be updating you as we get closer, but that's what it's looking like based on what the principal feedback was.
What is the date again?
I'm sorry, October 22nd.
Oh.
I believe it's a Monday. Is that right, Shar?
Correct.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Enrollment Advisory Committee, we met for the first time yesterday. It seems like it was longer than yesterday, but we had union leadership, site principals, directors, staff, one parent. We're trying to get more parents involved. And we discussed projections, enrollment, new and returning, inter and intra-district transfers, communications, marketing, customer service. We had a study session. We'll be providing that for public view once we kind of edit and add some more of comments from the board members from the study session. And we're meeting again on Monday. We want to make sure that that team's meeting frequently with us. Meeting Monday from 1 to 3. We'll be reconvening that group and sharing kind of some of the board input from the study session, and continuing to try to continue to work to try to, is there anything we can do to impact enrollment between now and CBED's day? So it's a tight timeline. And it was good meeting, and I think everyone agrees we need to have some short-term strategies as well as some long-term strategies to increase enrollment. And we're still working through it and trying to hear from everyone's lens. So definitely not a finished product, but definitely some urgency and interest from that committee to really help make recommendations and move forward with some quick action.
And
Any comments on that?
Thank you very much for sharing the ideas with us during our board study session, and I think some good comments came out. Thank you.
Yep. And they're looking at some deeper data as well as a committee.
No, I just had a quick question. Can you keep us in the loop as far as, I mean, you probably already going to do that anyway, and as far as meetings? And,
yes.
No more than 2 members. Are we okay? Are you okay with having us attend as visiting?
Yeah, as long as there's not more than 2,
right.
Just let Char know which 2 are coming, and we're happy to have you sit and listen to that meeting.
That is so important, the enrollment piece.
Absolutely. I wanted to, well, let me start with this, and I think that I kind of want to wait to give Cher a little time to get here. So let me move to a recognition. One of our people has been recognized, and I think it's important to call it out, as CSEA Retired Employee of the Year. And Sue Eustace was recognized recently for that at a large meeting. And so I just wanted to congratulate Sue on that achievement. Did you want to say anything, Sue?
So haven't you been retired now for the last 20 years? I don't know.
Don't you know CSEA nearly retired?
I have to admit I was pretty proud to receive the award. It's the first time they've been given. It's given by the person who is the chair, considered the president of the retiree CSCA unit. So I was very proud of that. I'm very proud of CSCA, and I will always work very hard for CSCA as I do for Newark Unified. Both of those, as well as Tyco, are sort of kind of a passion. You're never going to get rid of me. I've been here for 41 years, so you're stuck with me. And I really do care about those 3 entities. And the rest of my life, I plan on working very hard and making sure to do right by all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Sue. Sure.
Ms. Eustace, on a personal basis, I wanted to thank you for all the years that you've given to, we go back a long ways, and to come back and to lead CSEA at a time when your expertise is really needed, is really appreciated, and your leadership. And thank you for everything you do for Newark kids.
Okay. Any other comments about that? A couple more items, and I'm going to end with, I think, a really positive one. I'd like the board to kind of think about, as we go forward, maybe the idea of starting our board meetings later so we could start study sessions later to allow for everyone time to get here. I know that it's always a challenge to try to coordinate that, but if we know that it's just difficult for some people to get here at the earlier time slot, I'm okay with starting the meeting later, but it's really at the board's pleasure that we serve, and I know the staff puts a lot of work into trying to prepare things, and I want to make sure that everyone gets what they want. But just I don't know if you have any comments on that, or you want to kind of think about it for a while. But just something I would like to put on the table to discuss, if that's something that the board might be interested in looking at going forward. If not now, it maybe at a future time.
I'm sure the Member Chalmers or Member Brichelle is going to be following her with...
Would you use your mic, please?
I have always thought that it would be nice to have the board workshop start at 7, and so that everybody can attend. But I guess it's something we'll have to chat, find a way to chat.
Yeah. Another option I would like to have us talk about at some point is having meetings so we can have more than 1 hour to discuss important things like our strategic plan earlier this evening. So if we could have maybe a 3-hour meeting on an alternate,
Sure.
on an alternate date, I would like to see us talk about that as well.
It's easier, I think, if we could do it on an alternate Tuesday, because that seems to fit everything, if it works out.
I think that's something that happens when we reorganize every year. Think in terms of the schedule. Every time you have a reorganization, you have a different group of people with different needs, and I think it has to fit the needs, the work needs of. For me, it doesn't make any difference because I retired, so I'm very flexible. Nancy's in the same situation, so the people that have set responsibilities, I think, need to sort of drive what's going to work for them. But I think that's probably December.
Okay.
A decision.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I want to tell you, and I was hoping Sarah would be here, but she and I have been working on a study session that we would like to do with the board at the next board meeting. Is October 2nd? Is that the next board meeting? From 5 to 6, which would be this board discussing with a group of students from the high school. And I don't want to give you too much of what it is, but it'll be kind of a truth to power conversation. So listening to the voices of kids. She's really going gangbusters with this. She's working with leadership kids at the high school. I think I'm working with her and planning a really powerful experience for not only for them, but for the board. If you're okay, I'd like to schedule that with the kids. I think it'll be meaningful. I think it'll be meaningful.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
That concludes my report at this time.
Okay.
But if Shara comes back, maybe we can let her say something. I have a slot at the end. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's great. I think that's important for us to engage students. I think we should do that on a regular basis and plan it. It goes back to, I guess, in terms of thinking about the December times and framing, mapping out quarterly meetings with students or even longer, even more frequent periods.
What I can tell you, and this is really a testament to Sierra's leadership, the things she worries about are really the right things. And we had already talked about that very idea of this shouldn't just be a one-shot deal. How can we do maybe a series or at least 4 times this year or something that is going to be part of it. So more good things to come on that, but I'm kind of excited about it myself, so.
Well, we'll thank, if she, excuse me, if Sarah shows up, we'll thank her too.
Okay.
For moving forward on that. Next, we have a public hearing, and I would like to open the public hearing. And before we have speakers, I'd like to have Ms. Salinas introduce the petitioner.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board, community, superintendent. This evening, we have a charter school petition public hearing for the Uplift Cedar Charter School. At the August 21st Board of Education meeting, Dr. Bo-Chang Su, the lead petitioner, officially submitted his petition for Uplift Cedar Charter School to establish a charter school that would serve K-12 and workforce development youth ages 14 to 24. Tonight, we are holding a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the level of support for the petition by teachers employed by the school district, other employees of the school district, and parents, and that's under Educational Code 47605. After tonight's public hearing, the district committee will continue to review the petition and will bring forward a recommendation to the Board of Education. Per Educational Code, 60 days after a petition is received, the district committee will issue a recommendation to the Board of Education. The board will then take action and issue a decision at the October 16, 2018 meeting. And now I'd like to introduce the lead petitioner, Dr. Su, and we're going to have the PowerPoint, and we have 10 minutes for a presentation, and then we will hear from anyone who has submitted cards to speak. Thank you.
Along with me today are actually Kevin Chu, who is our board member and also the petitioner, and also Mr. Jason Schrock, who is our educational consultant, and he will actually help us do the presentation this evening. Thank you.
Superintendent Sanchez and the members of the board, thank you for our consideration for Uplift Cedar. We are here for students, and that is why we are here, that is why you're here, and so we thank you for your service in advance. As famous quote from Roosevelt, we can not build the future ourselves for the youth, but we can build up a future for this, for our youth for the future. And we are excited here about what we're focusing on. The mission of the charter school, like I said, is specifically for students. The charter school is to create future leaders passionate about making a positive contribution to local and community and global communities for science and math. And you're going to see in the petition and our presentation the local grassroots and also the national worldview. In consideration, we have submitted a petition. We have had our team work with national leaders to prepare the petition, to take a look at different curriculum providers. Our advisory board is interested in working and supporting this as well. And we have already been looking at some administrative space in the area. Keep in mind, we are proposing an independent study charter. So we do have an office space that could be available, but we are not seeking a large classroom or a large facility. The location and time frame. Once it's authorized, we would start immediately on the marketing. And I know that we are looking at the end of September. If we do not receive a positive vote before the end of September, then we would, of course, be looking at the year 2019 through 2020. If the board would seek action before December 30th, then we could proceed this year. The goals, let's see here.
Can we put that in the PowerPoint?
Is there a way that I could, working on?
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
I think it's just wait, we won't come out of your time.
Okay, not a problem.
Let Larry help set that up so it
Thank you.
shows correctly. I think it's just hard to read. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Let me talk about a little bit about the experience of Uplift Cedar. First of all, the students are our focus. The curriculum is extremely important for us to be able to match up, for us to create an individualized pathway for our students. So we have a lot of people right now reviewing curriculum that we see educationally sound, beneficial, that would meet the needs of your students, also that would complement the needs of the school district. We are looking as a partnership. So we would, through your strategic planning, hope to consider us being a part of that strategic plan on how we can work together in raising the youth of our community. We will provide the special education that you as a school district would provide as well. We would have a small class size focus. Languages is very important in our Uplift program. We would offer a variety of different languages, as you see. Of course, we would dedicate towards math and science. We are proposing an independent study, but also a multi-calendar charter, which would allow us to have summer sessions for our Track A starting July 1st. That would allow us to have immediate opportunities with the school district for some partnerships. Most importantly, continued learning for our students. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about the summer internships that would be beneficial for our students, co-curricular activities, and then of course a strong partnership with the industry and the community partners at large. Why would you consider being an authorizer for a charter school as the school board? First of all, we are here for students, and we would essentially be working with you and for you. You would be our parent. The charter school would have a separate board of directors, but you would be our authorizer. So our students that we serve would be within your authority. And so we would want to make sure, first of all, the academic success is the top priority for our students. We would be able to provide access to curriculum that you may not be able to provide for your students, that we would be able to allow the school district to participate and use on. We would have an independent study. REACH would allow us to serve students in this county, but more importantly, the counties around, which would allow us to bring new students to your school district, allow our students to have out-of-classroom experiences that would allow and promote internships, the gap students that have aged out that we can focus on in. Of course, the curriculum for the district, many times school districts benefit by allowing the charter school to buy the curriculum in the summer. and allowing that curriculum to be provided back to the authorizer free of charge. Also, we have seen very successful models where school districts' staff have been able to work in the summer for the charter school for continued learning, and credit recovery, advanced credit, and enrichment are opportunities of why you would want to partner with us. The summer experiences would be no cost to the school district, and by being an authorizer, of course, there is a financial benefit for the authorizing school district on partnering with the charter school. The world language, as I talked about, language is very important. Some people even say language is currency in the modern world right now. We highly believe in language and providing a global opportunity for our local community and local students. So we would have a variety of different languages available, and hopefully that would also benefit the district of potentially offering a class or some courses that you may not have. STEM, of course, is where the focus of Uplift Cedar is. Partnership with industries and community leaders. When you meet the founding board and the advisory board, you're going to see many connections to companies, organizations that have already sought interest in working with the charter, with internships, with job creations, with programs. And so that's going to be quite exciting to bring that opportunity. As you see, over 240 courses just alone in the STEM discipline. The multimedia, the robotics, the engineering, all of these are available on an independent study and online and blended components. And I'm going to go back again. These can be available back to the district for support, for cost reduction, also for some continued improvement of curriculum to build on already the success that you're working through. School leadership. This would be a national search for a school leader, and we already have put out some feelers, and we have several interested people that would want to be a school leader within this, this proposed charter school. We would definitely need to make sure they have a wealth of experience in an online and independent study model. And we would very much want to be high in teacher training within the charter. Many times you see a charter also work within the district for professional development opportunities for a win-win. The workforce initiative. This is an exciting opportunity where using the WIOA Act allows for a charter school to be able to serve students without a high school degree all the way to 24. And there's many benefits that would allow us to serve additional students on that. The WIO partnership also allows for those internship opportunities and focuses on CTE courses on the career pathways. How is this program offered? It is a nonprofit 501c3. It would have a board of directors on its own. It would seek accreditation through Advanced Ed. Programs are run through a public school, charter school independent study model. You see the variety of the different courses. They have to be taught by accredited teachers. And of course, the independent studies allow for 24/7, 7 days a week learning that allows for flexibility for the benefit of the students. And so we would be seeking to serve students outside of your district is primarily what we would see students, not within your district, but outside. And we would love to have an opportunity of a partnership that would allow for the curriculum and the programs to also benefit and bless the school district as well. We appreciate your time. We're excited for the opportunity to present this to you. And at this time, if there's any questions on behalf of the board, I'm available.
Okay. I think before we do that, we have several members of the community that would like to speak. David Hernandez.
Good evening, President Thomas, members of the board, Superintendent Sanchez, members of the community, and NTA members. I'm David Hernandez. I'm Executive Director of the Newark Teachers Association, an affiliate of the California Teachers Association. Charter schools, of course, are very much alive and well in California. They still are growing. They're a growing number, and yet our public schools are suffering because of the way the charter schools are pulling funds from our public schools. And in a time when Newark is looking at its budget cuts, when they're looking at how they're going to make ends meet, I find it very difficult to find how this particular charter petition is going to be beneficial for the Newark Unified School District. I believe that the program that they have that they're showing you is they're very well. But I put a challenge to this particular charter school. Why aren't you working with the district initially and bring these programs into the district without having to develop an independent or independent charter program with an outside board? Bring the Silicon Valley people into the school. If you want to have STEM programs, work with the Newark Unified School District to bring those particular programs. I don't think this district right now is in that mode to have a charter petition. I would challenge this particular group to seek another district to put their charter petition, because I don't think it's the right time for Newark. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kerry Noop.
Good evening. You know, it was interesting. When I filled in a form, I was asked, are you for or against charter schools? And, you know, I'm kind of surprised because it's the law. Sort of asking, are you for, you know, going over the speed limit? You know, it's the law. Charter schools are voted in by Californians. And, you know, a little bit of competition in principle is a good thing. So whether this district should take a charter school, you know, under its wing, yes or no, what I like to see is fairness. For the board to evaluate this on fair ground, even if it's not necessarily beneficial, but fairness is important. And also I would expect that the district and the board would not spend excessive amounts in legal costs to potentially, you know, find ways to look for ways of not having a charter school under its wing. So fairness is important. It's the law. Charter schools are legal. Charter schools are valid. And, you know, everybody who gives an application needs a fair chance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Eisen.
Thanks. Sorry, I never really understand the protocol about putting the item in before, so next time let's have a quick reminder. So I appreciate the presentation for the public, and if I understand it correctly, it sounds like the charter school group would like this board to kind of endorse or give some sort of seal of approval or stamp of approval. I don't know if these pieces of information are readily available for the public, but if you do have backers, is there a place where it's disclosed what sort of private interests are funding this charter school? I don't know if it was mentioned or if I missed it. Do you get federal money? And what types of groups might be kind of funding this group? Basically, are you fair? Are you equitable? Are you taking kids from all walks of life? Are you, what's your kind of policy on different groups, so to speak? And yeah, basically kind of backing what the first speaker said, now is kind of not the time to be offering these types of alternatives when we could work together as a district to really make our regular public schools much better, rather than kind of outsourcing them and putting our stamps of approval when we should really be focusing on our own schools. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address this issue? Board members, would any of you like to address this?
I made a request or so.
Mr. Preciado.
So, does Mr. what's his name? Should he come up to answer questions? So I have a few questions. So I noticed in the petition that there was no parent signatures. Can you tell me why?
There's no parent signatures. There are teacher signatures required, I believe. Mm-hmm.
So you have teacher, but you don't have any parent signatures?
I would have to look into that.
Okay. So do you accept all students?
We do. The charter would accept all students, yes.
And then in terms of online education, do you have a specific research that you'd be willing to share to show that that's more effective?
So on behalf, so I'm an advisor of the founding board. So there's several curriculum providers out there that in curriculum that they've been reviewing, and so I would imagine, with working with the districts until you'd work through an MOU, that there would be research that would be provided and working through that. So yes, that would be the next steps conversation. They have a variety of different courses and curriculum that would be able to be allowed, and so through that, the research would be available, yes.
Okay, and then my last question, would you agree to voluntarily recognize your employee's choice to join the union?
Yeah, I can't speak for the founding board, so I'm their consultant, but per the district's request, I mean, that would be working with the district. I would imagine that through the MOU that would be established, what the district's requirement with the charter to operate, that would be potentially one thing that they could work through, yes.
That's the only questions I have.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Crocker?
I just have a number, excuse me, I just have a number of clarifying questions, things I've asked you before, but I want to make sure everyone heard the answers to it. This is basically an independent study.
Correct.
From second grade to 12th grade. Are there situations where there will be social connections between the students, or are they completely isolated in their own cubicle?
So in an independent study model, there are a variety of different ways that teaching and learning can be provided. And so there could be in a blended session, there could be online, there could be group settings specifically. Some successful independent study schools that I'm aware of have regular meetups, activities, weekly opportunities where credentialed teachers would meet in a public setting, a potential facility that a school district, if they decide to do a rental agreement. So there's a lot of different ways that I've seen independent study work in not only traditional online, but also successful blended models.
Have you set up a structure in which you want this school to work? There are various ways you might do it, but have you set that structure up so that we can see what the structure is?
That has been established, yes.
So do we have access to seeing what?
Sure. I mean, that would be part of the conversation. The board, the founding board would love to share with you, even go through some of the curriculum and the design and how that would look, yes.
So that is not something that you're talking about before or having to vote on the acceptance, is that correct?
Within the petition is at hand that you have to vote on the acceptance of the petition.
Correct.
And so that would be within the body of the petition that they could show you examples of that, yes.
Can you tell me why Newark was selected as, is there a great need in this area for this kind of service for students as you've seen?
There's a high level of students seeking alternate educational choices. I also believe that a superintendent such as yourself, sir, who's had a history of community support, also with students that need choices. This area has high level of opportunities for some internships that, yes, I believe there are not enough choices that some students are looking for in this type. This is an option for some students. My students go to a brick and mortar traditional school. Some students are looking more for a non-traditional or an independent study. And in this area, there are not a lot of charter schools or school districts providing this type of program. So there are, I don't see a lack of students that would be not coming. I think there would be a majority of students that you would see in the counties surrounding that would be excited about a program like this.
When you talk about enrollment, our students that are enrolled in our schools would not be eligible for utilizing this on a part-time basis, but rather you're looking for full-time independent study students versus having it an enrichment for our particular students.
Correct, and so the founding board's desire is to seek new students outside of your school district. They actually would want to bring new students, non-students that you would have enrolled, but students that would be around the community outside of your school district. So it would essentially be new students that you would benefit from, that would be excited by a program like that. Where your Newark students could benefit would be in a working relationship within the school district for a summer program. And/or the curriculum that with the charter would be provided. We could provide those curriculum to your Newark students to benefit from that. But the desire for the school or the founding team is not to come in and recruit students from your school district. It's actually to complement and partner with you.
The responsibility of the school district, how is that formulated, and how is it set up so that it does not take resources from our school district to take care of oversight? Because
so if knowing that students outside your school district would be the students of choice to enroll, it would bring new students to your district, which would bring new revenue, a positive financial gain, and the school district would benefit as the authorizer.
We benefit only by reimbursement of cost of administration because the money is passed through to you. Is that correct?
You are our authorizer, so that there is a percentage of revenue of the charter school that you, being the authorizing school board, a school district would take, and that percentage would be within the educational law and with also the contract that would be written up through legal. The other benefit that it does provide the charter to allow back to you is a lot of cost savings in curriculum if the charter school were able to support that.
So essentially, you're talking about 2 or 3% of your money coming back for administration for oversight costs.
Yep.
So there probably will be no benefit from the district, other than the fact that whatever we need for administrative over covering would be covered by yours. So it should not be a negative draw, but
it will not be a negative financial draw. It will be a positive. Also, there's opportunity for some shared staffing and some shared curriculum costs that not only would be financially beneficial, but it will be cost savings immediately for you. So there would not be a negative net gain for you as a school district. You are also, the students are measured outside of your school district academically. So what does that mean? Liability is within the charter school. Even though you are our authorizer, all liability is on the charter school. The reports of the academic success of the students are measured and reported as the charter school alone. We will have good results. I'm very confident in that. You will benefit with those results. Should this school not academically perform well, that will not affect your school district's rating or scores. They would be separate. So there is some liability protection there for the board, but an opportunity to work together.
When I talked with you earlier, you had mentioned the fact there were school districts that had utilized, that you thought were in agreement with this particular approach. And have we been able to contact these school districts in terms of their experience with the group?
I know some references were provided, and I also know there are several other superintendents that have, and board of directors that have been authorizers that I know would be welcome to speak to your board and superintendents about the benefits of a district working with the charter school.
Do we have those lists?
Mr. Rodriguez,
If I may clarify, we have voted on a board policy. We're following that policy, and I don't want to contaminate that process by answering that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Are you?
Yes, I'm finished.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to make the presentation, and for the other members on either the board or for Uplift. When you say liability is protected, that a lot of people say that, but we know that it isn't. Liability is never protected because, you know, being that with the hosting or there's always an issue of liability, but we're, you know, when we get into an agreement, then we have, you know, stuff that we do from a district standpoint that, you know, protects us as much as possible. So my question is, since we have a time restraint, if the board has additional questions, and we can put it through the superintendent, and then maybe, have him share with you, and then maybe you can, if that's okay. You mentioned in your presentation that, again, that your recruitment would be outside of of Newark Unified School District.
So a lot of times, school boards will not only have a petition, but then they also create an MOU. And within that MOU details the operation and the ability of the jurisdiction of the student that they would want to recruit. Many times, even in the MOU, it states that the school district students, when they're enrolled, would not be eligible. So you talk about asking if they would serve all students. Ideally, you'd want to serve all students. But if the authorizer would say we would want first right of serving the students within our school district, then yes, in an MOU, you could state that outside of your school district students are only eligible. That could be written in an MOU.
Well, the definition of choice is something that's, pushed, But what I wanted to ask you is, students that are homeschooling, for instance, would they be students that you would recruit?
A homeschool student is somebody that would seek an independent study charter. So yes, that would be a school a student that would benefit greatly from this program.
And then students from other school districts, would it be from public entities, from public schools, or would you basically, your recruitment be to students that are in independent schools, like, for instance, the one we have here in Newark?
A student can only be enrolled in a public school at one school district at a time. Right. So anybody would be eligible in this county, in the counties that this would touch. That's an independent study. So students, whether they're a public school or if they attended a private that wanted to transfer into a public school, they would all be eligible.
Right. So one last question. If there's differences, I know we have an MOU and everything, and that's all good, but occasionally there's differences that come up between what you feel is what was promised, for instance, and what the district feels. Is there an arbitration clause or something in there where
So I've seen successful partnerships where actually one member of the board actually serves on as a board member or an ad hoc board member of the charter school as well. So there's advisory groups, there's steering committees, strategic planning, all of that would be welcome, and we would highly want that as a partnership within the district.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Next, I have a question. CSU and UC eligibility is important to students, and how would your curriculum be coincide with their need for courses?
I'm coming from 11 years of higher ed and administration, so that you hit my heart right there. Notice in the presentation, accreditation is highly important. All high school courses would be A through G, would be UC approved. Only content curriculum teachers with credentials could be teaching there. Independent study has to be the same as what you would follow in the high school or the courses. So it would not be any different than the requirements. Every student in high school would have to take A to G course that would be UC certified.
Well, they require 2 lab courses.
Correct. So the wet labs, you talk about a blended, in an independent study model, the science wet labs has to be done in a blended component. They have to be in a live setting, and so there would be direct partnerships that would be required to have. And so that the great opportunity to work together, but that's a requirement within the UC science to have wet labs.
Then my last question, before moving it back to several of the board members, how would parents be involved? The LCAP really requires that parents be involved, and if
well, I don't see anything different. I've seen great PTAs join. I've seen steering committees. I've seen parents association groups. A lot of the meetups of the field trips are involving with parents as well. So this is an opportunity really to bring the community together, just like you. We would advertise to our students to participate in the Wizard Days. I mean, we would hope that we would bring our parents together, and this would be a joint family. But no, parents, this is a community public school that parents would be actively involved just like your school district.
Okay. Mr. Sanchez, did you want? Thank you.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Something you mentioned, Member Rodriguez. We do not have a MOU with the charter school. We're in a process right now, and I think if anyone has questions about the process, we have our policies are public. That was approved. So that if you're wondering how the process works, that's where it is. But that's available for the public to view.
Okay, Mr. Preciado, and then Ms. Crocker.
Thank you, Superintendent Sanchez. This is why we have a formal public hearing to engage in that discussion. For my first question, when I noted that you had no parent signatures, you mentioned that teachers supported the petition. Are those teachers your employees?
The school has not been started yet. So no, these are just like-minded teachers that are either in a charter school or would be interested in working for a school like this.
So the people who are supported, just to be clear,
Volunteers.
the people who are supporting the petition
Yep.
could be potential employees?
Correct. Yeah, people that have shown a meaningful interest in an independent study school.
Which may be why they're supporting. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Crocker?
Just want to make it clear, the funding source is from the state.
Correct.
It's ADA.
It's ADA.
It's the ADA. If there were a problem that we had with the school, with the charter school in terms of curriculum, or the use of funds, or the salaries, or stipends that might be given to people that are on boards, or that are advisors, whatever it might be, what is the district's role in that? Is there a district's role in that?
That would be spelled out through the contract and through the working MOU and the establishment of working through that. But, charter schools are measured by academic success and by fiscal responsibility. So everything would be transparent, and I would hope that the authorizing school district would be working along the leadership with this charter school intimately, and making sure that it complements the mission and the vision of the school district and the community at large.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The public hearing is closed. Next, we have another public hearing, which is on the joint initial proposal for reopeners between the CSEA and the Newark Unified School District. I will open that public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward and speak to this? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Next, we move to public comment on non-agenda items. So, Merrick Yarborough.
Good evening, Merrick Yarborough. I'm here on behalf of the CBOC, or the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, this evening. By a majority vote, the CBOC recommend that the Board of Education do make best efforts to avoid the issues that can be raised by failing to obligate the 85% required under the bond language. The CBO, Lowell, is quite well versed with that. You have a June 2019 deadline to be able to have these projects activated, and there is penalties both on the inside with the bond management as well as with the IRS if it has failed to be allocations. So the question then comes down to recognizing that you have project deadlines you have to deal with, and lead times that to be able to execute between now and then. Vanner has provided a February 2018 recommended list. The CBOC has no objections to utilizing that list to leverage the ability to meet this 85% expenditure deadline. So you're looking to basically book about $11 million worth of expenses on facilities that we already have identified issues for. The only issue that you're going to have left is management of the projects, because Vanner is terminated from taking on new projects. And then as a personal note, which was not voted upon by the CBOC, but there was quite a bit of discussion, and it was largely not appreciated that the amount of research that was put into the project guide that was given to the bond in 2011 with what's known as the Kitchell report is actually identified as a master plan is only 7 years old. We're now 5 years into spending money of $60 million project, of which $145 million, $150 million worth of projects were identified at great expense to the district at that time. And yet we're looking at investing a lot of money into the master plan now, of which 80% of it was identified as being paid for by the bond for facility master plan. Again, without any recognition or insight or transparency to the CVOC that that this prior work was going to be leveraged to help kickstart that. So at $400,000 worth of Measure G money, we'd appreciate it if we could see that the new master plan takes its legs from the work that was spent for in the 2011 project.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez.
This is the most I've ever been at your school board meetings. David Hernandez, again, I'm the executive director for NTA. President Thomas and board members and NTA community. Basically, I want to talk to you, it's a non-item. It talks about relationships. You know, over the last year, you guys had a very difficult task of balancing a budget last year and making a lot of cuts and doing a lot of the, I believe, the right things in making sure that programs were sustained moving forward. This year, starting a new school year, though, I have to share with you that the morale of your staff is very low. It's not as high as you think. Newark loses a lot of its certificated staff to other school districts. I know that because I service 4 other ones, and I see where people go left and right. But starting the year on low morale does not help us as we move forward into negotiations. And I bring this forward because I'm hoping that the relationships are going to build upon a positive, going forward, positively moving forward. We started off the year, first of all, starting with an issue with our president release time. We dealt with a situation where teachers' microwaves and refrigerators and sofas and all these furniture that were moved out of the rooms. We were never able to see what an ed code or fire code or anything that had to say that was necessary. We're starting the year off with some class size issues dealing with right now. We're dealing with removing with instructional materials in math in our particular classrooms. We're dealing with the contractual issues in the contract where it says we are supposed to receive copies of schedules and adjunct duties. We're dealing with those particular situations. We're dealing with people who are involuntarily transferred to other sites and then being told that they have to be evaluated when it's not really their cycle. We want to make sure that folks in this district, and I know there's been a lot of new personnel, is I hope that they're reading the contract. They're looking at the timeline. They're looking at those things that are contractual that we both agreed to. It's a binding contract. It's our responsibility as a district, and it's our responsibility as a union to make sure that we're both working together on that particular item. So looking forward, I'm hoping that we will build a stronger relationship and that we will work to mitigate some of these issues that are outstanding right now, and there will be further conversation about some of these issues. But I just wanted to bring in light because there's this notion that things that I think in the past have been kind of complacent, and I think there's this notion that NTA is a weak organization. I have to share with you, we're not weak at all. If anything, when these morale issues happen, I have to thank the district for organizing us, because all it does is make people pissed off, and it makes them want to do things that they normally wouldn't do in a particular setting. So moving forward, I'm hoping that we're going to work closely together to see that some of these issues are solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Parks.
Good evening. Your district core values, there are 7 of them. The last one is transparency. And in there you say we will conduct ourselves with openness and candor in all aspects of our work. We seek feedback from all directions to achieve open communication and foster collaboration. We offer constructive feedback to others that is timely and specific and directive. We are proactive in communicating outcomes up, down, and across the entire organization. The reason I'm reading these to you is because I would really appreciate that you live by your words and your core values. And it doesn't seem like that happens very often. And I'm going to cite a few situations. The Whiteford situation. You moved some perfectly good teachers and students out of there because they were not in the least restrictive environment. And the place has been sitting vacant after almost $2 million worth of Measure G bond money was spent to renovate that site. It's empty. Use it occasionally for a meeting. Now, supposedly, you're talking, not publicly, it's not happened, it's not been on the agenda, but you talk about it. Well, maybe we're going to move the district office over there. I think that deserves the public's, I think it needs to be deserving that it be on the agenda and it be a part of a public discussion. You talk about district office is empty. Now we've got property to sell. Where's your 7-Eleven committee? When is that going to happen? When is that even going to be a topic of discussion? School in Area 3, we got property. Permits have been pulled, your clock is ticking. I watched you earlier this evening with your little map. Here's where the school could go. You, in subtle little innuendos, say, well, there could be a school. But where have you actually had a public discussion in this meeting in front of the public and told them, if that opens, we can't afford what we have now. We're going to build a new school. How are you going to pay for that? Oh, a pond. Because where would you have the money? Oh, sell here maybe, then you can build? But where have those discussions happened in the public purview? And, oh, wait a minute, we can't maintain what we have now, and we're going to go build another school? So wait a minute, when we have capacity of almost 9,000, and we don't even have 6,000. So really, do we need all the schools that we have now, and we're going to build a new school? But where are those conversations happening in the public purview? Transparency. Please keep that in mind. Please have these discussions in public where the public can give their input and be provided the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we move on to staff reports. 11.1 is the update on the capital improvement funds, and we do have a speaker, several speakers that would like to address this. Should we have them address it before your presentation or after?
It's up to you. Let's go after.
Okay, we'll have, after your presentation, we'll, okay.
Okay, there we are. And so this is our report on capital improvement funds, and something the board's been asking for a while. And so this will be an overview. We won't go into a great deal of depth, but we do have some more depth on our CBOC, the webpage, especially concerning Measure G. But so we'll go through this, and if the board would like further detail on some of these funds, we can certainly come back at another board meeting and do that. So, I pushed the wrong button. There we go. Overview. The district does have several funds. That we operate about 11 major funds, and some have multiple purposes, like the general fund can pay for instructional programs, and it could pay for facilities too, and all sorts of different things. Other funds are very specific in their purpose, and things like the capital improvement funds are very, very specific in their purposes, and you can't do a lot of multiple things, but you can do specific things with them. We have 3 capital improvement funds here in this district. And we're going to talk about each of those tonight. The one is the building fund,
And that's the fund that bonds are used for, where the monies from sale of bonds go in there, and then the expenditures happen from the building fund, like Measure G and Measure B before that. Capital Facilities Fund, otherwise known as the Developer Fee Fund. That's where all of your developer fees money go, and if you make expenditures related to enrollment growth or in various parts of the district, then that fund is available for those expenses. Just that type of capital improvement can be funded by this the Developer Fee Fund. And then finally, the Special Reserve for Capital Outlay. And in this district, most of the money in that fund comes from the sale of Russian. You can also have other kind of lease monies that go into that fund. You can even contribute from the general fund to this capital facilities fund if you want. But once it goes into that fund, the money can only be used for capital improvements. So here are the different funds in the district. We're just showing, there's different ways of showing, how much money is in there, but we just show the balance as of June 30th this year. So you can see the highlighted ones there. The building fund had about $12.5 million. The capital facilities fund, developer fees, had a little over $10 million. And the special reserve for capital, that's the Russian funds, had a little over $11 million left at the end of June. So we'll talk about the capital facilities fund first, since that's a pretty easy one to talk about. There hasn't been a lot of expenditure activity in that, but you can see from this slide here that revenues continue to flow into that fund to the tune of roughly $3 million a year, and you have very few expenditures. So you're building up quite a balance in that fund. By the end of this year, you could have close to $14 million in that fund. At the end of 17-18, you had almost $11 million. So next, we just show a little detail on the expenditures over the last 3 years and the budget for this year. As you can see, very little money spent on facility improvements because you could only spend for increases in enrollment. Say, for instance, if you have an increase in enrollment at the middle school level, doesn't have to be district-wide, but just at that level, you can certainly spend money there to make improvements to accommodate those additional students. So that was done back in 15-16. You have very minor expenses since then. There are legal expenses associated with keeping this fund maintained. You have legal obligations to do developer fee studies and different kinds of studies to make sure that the developer fees are leveled properly. And so another important activity will happen this year, which is the facility master plan. And there will be a certain part of that facility master plan designed around site, the way sites are configured in this district. If you have additional growth due to additional homes being built in certain areas, what kind of improvements might be made either within those areas or at other existing schools to accommodate that additional growth. So part of the facility master plan will be involved in how to handle growth as people move into these new homes that are being built in this area. So that's the capital facilities plan. I think, in terms of future plans, continued use of the funds to comply with the legal requirements, conduct the assessments we talked about, and then use the proceeds from developer fees for construction and reconstruction of school facilities associated with impact of enrollment growth or development. And that's the legally required use of that fund. Next, we just have a little bit here for you in this report on the building fund Measure G. There's also another large document attached to this board item, which is a many page report on the activities of Measure G, where you can go in and see how much has been spent at each school site, for each type of project at each school site. I think earlier tonight someone talked about Banner's recommendations for additional projects for the fund, and they do have a priority list at the end of that report of projects they think the district should take on next. So that we won't go into that detailed report tonight, but just so you can see, this is Measure G from its inception back in 2012-13. We show all of the issuances that occurred. All the bonds have been issued. All 63 million have been issued. You get other revenues that come in, either from interest or from other proceeds from bonds or other reimbursements that have come in up to almost $1 million during the life of the bond so far. And then we show the amount of expenditures each year. And you've spent the vast majority of the bond funds already, over $50 million. And there's some additional expenditures that will take place this year as well. At the end of 17-18, you had about $12.5 million left in this fund, most of which is Measure G. There is some Measure B money in there as well. And then this year you will spend, there was very little money budgeted, but if the administration comes back to the board with additional projects for this year, then you'd increase that budget so that those expenditures could take place. Things like additional HVAC, replacements, particularly at the high school, but there are some other areas where HVAC replacement is needed as well. We also talked about the tech project that you approved, $1.5 million tech project that was initially approved to come out of the Russian funds, which we'll see next. And that's an allowable expense out of Measure G. And so we may be bringing back to you an item to change the funding on that from Fund 400, which is the Russian funds, to Fund 21-210, which is Measure G. So look for that coming soon.
Excuse me, I notice you're not very close to the microphone, and I'm wondering if the folks at home can hear you. I haven't heard of any complaints, but just in case.
I'll try to do both here. So in terms of next plans for the building fund, just identify priorities for the remaining Measure G construction and reconstruction projects. You have many more needs than the 11 million or so that you have left, so it's a matter of prioritizing how you're going to be spending those funds. And the facility master plan should be a help in doing that as well. And then, as it talks about here, doing those projects in conjunction with the facilities master plan. So next we have the Special Reserve for Capital Outlay Projects. Fund 400, which is mostly referred to here as the Russian money from the Russian sale of site. So most of the money in there is from that sale of site from Russia. So we first of all show you here the summary of the revenues and expenditures over the past 4 years, past 3 years plus the budget for this year. And you see you have a little bit of revenue coming in from interest earnings. You had expenses and transfers, and you have a large total expense and transfer that first year, $4.25 million, because you got authorization from the state to transfer $4 million of the sale of site funds to Fund 17, your special reserve for other than capital. And so that's kind of a safety valve in terms of a reserve for the district. The district actually used $3 million of that in last fiscal year. So that fund is dwindling. But this shows you that you've been, other than that first year, you've been spending roughly $2 million a year. And so at this point, it looks like at the end of this year, we'll probably have about $9 million remaining, unless the staff comes to you and you approve additional expenditures. Although on the flip side, we may take some budgeted expenditures out from this year, the tech money, and actually have those expenditures take place in Measure G. So next, we show a little bit of that detail. We show the original budget that the board approved, which included the transfer of the $4 million, there was $1.97 million for the merger of Bunker and Milani, and then the classroom pilot project. There was a little over $2.3 million approved for the tech upgrade. Exterior transformations was originally approved at a little over $4 million, but then the board approved to take some money out of that and put it in a wish list fund for the schools to come up with items that they would like at their sites. And you've approved several of those individual projects. There's still about $100,000 remaining. Actually, a little more than that, because there's about $286,000 budgeted for this year, and not all of that may be spent. We'll have to see. And then there have been some additional miscellaneous projects that were not originally budgeted, but that the board has approved based on individual items that have come up. One example of that was the cafeteria tables that the board approved last year. So the total remaining in the funds at the end of this year should be somewhere in the $9 million range. So in terms of future plans, we have identified priorities for the remaining capital improvements, and we're working currently on a plan for providing some priorities for this year, and that should come to you in October. We'll be identifying needs for eligible funding in conjunction with the district's facility master plan, and we'll continue to implement projects as approved by the board. So that's it for our presentation tonight. Again, if there's more detail you would like on any of these funds, we'd be happy to put that together for you at a future presentation.
I'm sure board members have questions, and we'll call you back. But in the meantime, let's ask for public comment. Ms. Parks?
Good evening. Measure G says to preserve quality education, provide safe and modern schools, and qualify for matching funds shall Newark Unified School District update aging classrooms, libraries, science labs to meet earthquake, fire safety standards, improve access for students with disabilities, remove asbestos, lead, and hazardous materials, and improve energy operational efficiency to maximize funding for instructional programs by issuing a $63 million in bond at a legal rate with independent oversight, no money for administrative salaries, and all funds staying in Newark. That was the bond. You spent money for Kitchell and BLM architects for facilities master plan. $145 million worth of renovations. Of the $145 million, you did 60, you haven't done 63 million, you've done 60, or you've done 50, sorry, 50 million. Close, give or take a million. You still, not all of the 50 million is in here. You added on more. So why are you discussing spending $422,000 out of Measure G, what we all voted for, that said that what you said you were going to do with it. And now you're going to take almost $500,000 and apply it to a facilities master plan that's going to benefit all over. You have 12 million left. And you need a facilities master plan. And if you take the 1.5 that you're going to take out of the Russian, instead of what you already approved 3 months ago, and now you're not going to keep it out of the Russian money because, that money is dwindling too fast. I assume that's your thought process. Let's just take it out of Measure G, and that's another 1.5 that doesn't update classrooms, doesn't make earthquake safety, doesn't do all that you told the public you were going to do with that money. Now, I don't see in, CVOC, previous CVOC member, I didn't remember seeing anything in there that paid for this. Where do you have, if you look at the authority for what you're allowed to pay for, where are you allowed to do the facilities master plan, once again, 7 years later, just like Mr. Yarborough mentioned, to have another plan to spend the last little portion and put the Lions portion on Measure G? I don't think that's proper use. But I have to say thank you for all of the comments that you made regarding the developers' fees, because I have been trying for over a year to instill in them that the developers' fees has to do around growth from the new development. Thank you for those words.
Mr. Knoop?
I don't think I can say it any better than Cindy, because I wanted to say pretty much the same thing, and she took the words right out of my mouth. Prop 39 is very restricted. We add to that the bond language. We went to the citizens. What you're doing now with the bond, saying we put $500,000 or $440,000, that's not for the bond, just for the bond. I can imagine you can put $50,000 for some sort of assessments or reassessments. But let's be honest, that's for many more things. The full ADIS contract is for a lot of other things, and it has nothing to do with the bond. And now I hear you want to kind of haphazardly take $1 million that you approved for one fund and I'll just put it back in the other bond. I thought in the last meeting we said we wanted to have a budget for things. We don't want to have a $60,000 set of tables, but now we're just switching over $1 million? And no, I don't think projectors fall under the bond. It's not in the project, it's not listed. And I think if you go ahead, do this, you do a great disservice to the citizens of Newark who voted for this. You had 120 million plus requirements. Why did you stop at $50,000, $52,000, $55,000? And now it seems to be Measure G can be like some sort of a slush fund where we can just put all the stuff in. That's not fair to the voters. Please change your ways. It's wrong.
Thank you. Board, do you have questions? Mr. Preciado.
I have a few questions. So I heard the timeline for, or I believe I heard the timeline for the special reserve for capital outlay will be next in October at the next meeting. Is there a timeline for the priority, for us to have a priority discussion regarding the Measure G of how to move forward? I know we've discussed several times of how we don't want to do this piecemeal approach, that we want to do what's the need, assess the need that we already have outlined, and then figure out how do we prioritize that so that we're moving in a more concerted manner. So do we have a timeline for discussing either all of the things or just Measure G?
I think October would be a reasonable timeline for discussion of both Measure G and Russian. Actually, because there is some overlap between the two. I think it's more productive to deal with them both together, frankly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Will we be able, if we bring that in October, will we be able to spend the 85% by next summer that we're required to spend?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not sure the word required to spend is really proper. There's an arbitrage certificate with the issuance of Series C, where that says, yes, you have a plan for spending 85% within the first 3 years, which was true. And then that plan got a little bit derailed, but you're getting back on that plan. And so within a reasonable amount of time, maybe not by June 19th, but within a reasonable amount of time after that, I think you will be able to at least encumber through contracts 85% of the Series C issuance. So I think to actually have expended it, probably not, but to have it encumbered or close to being encumbered, I think is something that's doable.
Okay. Ms. Crocker?
That was my comment too. I figured it, if my math is correct, we're talking about 3 million approximately to make the 85%. If we spent 50 million or 50.5 million, we need to go to 53.7 million, which would be 85% of the 63. If that's the simple kind of math we're talking about. So it's a matter of encumbering, not necessarily completing.
No, I
Right.
think it's,
Yeah.
isn't it 85% of the measure of the C?
Yes.
It's
yeah.
not 85% of the entire
No,
bond.
yeah, it's 85% of the 18, I think it was 18 million for
Okay.
Series C. So, yeah, so you actually have another 7 to 8 million to either spend or encumber.
Okay. But encumbering
again,
is
there are if it doesn't happen but you're reasonably close. I mean, if you should earn, the whole purpose of this has to do with the IRS not wanting public entities to issue large debt and then just sit and hold on the money and make excess interest on it. Well, you're not making excess interest if you look at the interest rates you're getting. And so, I mean, you should, do your due diligence to comply as much as possible with the arbitrage certificate, but do it in a thoughtful manner.
Well, Vanner gave us a list that they discussed several times now, and it was HVAC units, and you mentioned the high school, but that there's also other HVAC units that need
Absolutely.
replacing. We have toured our sites, and some of the portables are in such a dilapidated condition, so some of those obviously need to be replaced or torn down. We've had talk about a new, and this is, I think, part of the reason we're going for another facilities plan is after 7 or 8 years, things change. And one of the things that seems to have changed is a need for locks. And the current
hardware.
door locks that no longer can be, we can't get parts for them. So perhaps replacing door locks. And I think what the board really wants, at least I'll speak for myself, is we want a budget recommendation that we can approve for staff to move forward quickly on some of these things that have been brought to us but have never been brought to us as a recommendation for staff in a prioritized list. So that would be my input. Mr. Preciado?
So yes, I do want to echo that statement, and for me it's kind of being more directive. We need to comply and meet the requirements, and whatever conversation needs to happen for us to move forward to have the conversation, let us know like what's required on our end in terms of setting up the time to have those conversations. And to Member Thomas's point would be to review the priorities that were provided by Vanner. Look at, my understanding there was might be previous priorities that were that came before. So putting that together, and then what would be appreciated would be having a staff recommendation for how to move forward. And then that's where we discuss and we say, like this, these are the things that we think are priority, and then we move forward in that manner.
Thank you.
And I think that, for my thinking, the Russian money is a secondary issue, and that doesn't have to be spent immediately or anything, and can await ADIS's proposals and recommendations. Is there any other thought on this topic?
I just had one. Thank you for breaking it down for me. I do have concern about the $422,000 on the master facilities plan that we're spending. Where in the Measure G is there wording that says that we can spend it or take the money from that particular?
Yeah, we can show you the exact language, but in Measure G, it goes on for several pages actually about the types of expenditures that it was in the resolution that you passed. The types of expenditures that Measure G can and should fund, and it not only includes the actual construction of buildings and facility improvements, but the planning for and the designing for those improvements as well. Right. So, but we can pull that language and highlight it for you and bring it back to you so you're comfortable with the authorization for Measure G.
Because it's like an umbrella, and we're spending all this money on facilities, meaning for the whole school district, and yet we're taking it out of one particular.
Actually, three. You're taking out of three places. The Measure G did not authorize expenditures for the district office or courtyard. Mm-hmm. And so we have specific expenditures in the facility master plan for those two facilities. Mm-hmm. And that will be funded by Russian, not the bond.
Okay.
Also, there's a specific part of the facility master plan dealing with placement of sites and site planning, and that will be funded by the Capital Facilities Fund developer fees, not Measure G.
So maybe getting a breakdown of that would help me, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell.
Okay, next we move on to 11.2. I don't believe we have anyone speaking to that.
Lowell's on again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we get to talk about enrollment. And enrollment and ADA and funded ADA. Those are three different things, and they can get very confusing. So we're going to try to break this down here to so that we can all understand those three concepts and how they work in terms of our funding here in California. So move on here.
I'm sorry, we had a request to move, well, no, stay there. Just asking the board, we've had a request to move the SIPSA up for Schilling, and this will probably take another 10 or 15 minutes. Can we take Schilling out of order?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so
that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a request.
You should make it formal because this is where it gets.
Okay.
This is where it gets,
could I ask the board?
You have to make a motion to suspend the rules to reorganize the.
Would you please make that motion?
So, a motion to suspend the rules in order to reorganize the agenda to move Schilling after 11.1.
Is there a second?
I say we probably should have done that. We improved the agenda, but that's okay. I second it.
Well, we didn't. It's a timing thing. Please vote. Four ayes. Thank you. So we will next entertain item 12.1. I believe we have a speaker, Mr. Knoop, on this.
The district wants to be a STEAM school, well, I always have a little bit of problem with STEAM, with the A especially. STEM comes from there's a federal initiative to get technology, mathematics, science, to get students more interested in that. And actually, I'm all for that. I love these subjects, so you have me with that, STEM. And so I say that because I just want to give an example here, and I'm not picking on Schilling, because all the school sites are the same. So if we're serious about STEM or STEAM or what have you, I looked at the school site plan. And I know the parents vote for it, but the direction comes from the district and the principal. I mean, I've been 6 years in the school, and that's the way it works. And so I see of the, the $140,000 budget, the $200,000, whatever it is, we have $5,000 on mathematics. 5,000. And on STEAM, we have 5,000. The rest is projects. I'll just call it that. So how serious are we really? Are we just keeping a front and say we want to be a STEAM school? Well, apparently $5,000 in mathematics is enough. And again, this is not just Schilling. If you pull out, I read them all. If you pull out any school site plan, it's the same thing. So if we want to be serious about our test scores, serious about our academics, let's focus on the core stuff. And then we could put the icing on it and say we're a STEAM school. Start from the bottom. And I hope that the board members make comments on that too. Whether they like it, maybe they say, no, we're all for that. We just want these other programs of $5,000. That's plenty for mathematics. And it's been going every year like this. Next month, we're going to see the CASP scores, and hopefully they're better. But, if you don't spend extra effort on these core things, it's not going to get better. It's just not going to work. So if we want to be a STEM or STEAM school, then maybe for the next round, we want to tell the principals or whoever makes those school site council templates to put in some more on mathematics and science. $5,000 over a budget. How much is it? How much is Schilling? 140,000 or 240? I think it's 140,000. And most of it goes to, intervention teacher, aides, and I'm sure they do all wonderful things, but core education is so important. You build from the center, and then it gets better. If you start cannibalizing that, then it doesn't work. So, thanks.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation on this?
No, this is just to recall and to share again. If you remember last year, before the school year ended, we brought forward that the Schilling SIPSA would come forward in the fall after our new principal had time to work with the school site council and really look at the updated data. So this evening, Dr. Castañeda Leal and her school site council met and bring forward this site plan for your approval.
Good evening, board, superintendent, and other members of the cabinet and community members. I'm Dr. Castañeda Leal. I didn't do a PowerPoint presentation because from my understanding, this was just a review, and I added some more things with my school site council. But if you guys do have any questions or any concerns, I am here to answer them to the best of my ability.
All right, Mr. Preciado?
I was going to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, but as long as you're here, I also have a concern about the amount of money that goes into all of our SIPSAs for or LCAP, plans for personnel and how we are measuring the effectiveness. So I don't know if you want to answer that or Leticia?
So, yes, as you know, our school site council has the governance of overseeing and looking at data and making those decisions. In several of our schools, particularly our Title I schools, where the students who are generating the Title I funds may be at the level of need that needs some intervention or some more targeted support. In our district, as with many other districts, that can take the form of an extra certificated teacher or a classified staff person who can push in or pull out groups to give students more targeted support. So with Schilling Elementary in particular, that appears to be the decision that they have made based on data that an intervention teacher, specifically in English learners and kids who needed targeted support, would be part of the staff personnel. So if you recall the Schilling staff who came forward at the end of last year, that seemed to be a very important part and aspect of their site plan and their team structure. And I'm very happy to report that we do have someone who is now in place doing that work, and I know that was what we had promised the staff there. But certainly, all of these decisions are made on data. Based on data, and certainly we will bring forward some updates as we start to see the CASP scores, which are still under embargo, but we will see those in October, is what we're hearing.
Mr. Preciado?
Yeah, so after the motion, the second, I did want to make a request to speak. So since we're going to dive into it here, let's look at LCUP Goal 1.4, improve achievement for underserved students. I don't see anything wrong with that. I will be up here saying us committing to resources to underserved students. I agree with that. That's my position. And I don't see how that's an issue, and that's where I stand.
Okay. Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Well, you got approved during the summer, so we really didn't get a chance to interact too much. I just want you to know that the school that you took over, Schilling, has a great history with me personally and with the district. It's a lot of people feel it's the best school, not only in Newark, but in the whole area. So we've always had excellent teachers and staff at Schilling that love being there, and so not only do we welcome you to Newark, but we welcome you to Schilling, and we appreciate everything your leadership, based on your history, brings to that particular site. So the question I had is not just to you, but it's to the superintendent and the board as a whole. Is we encourage community members, parents, to serve on the site council. To me, that's a more important job than being on the school board. That's where the decisions are made at that particular site. And you're the mayor, basically, of that particular community. And so the question is, if we're asking individuals or parents or community members to be on site councils, and they make decisions based on what they feel is best for their particular community, how does it fall on us? Do we really want to override? Or I understand that we question if they're going to spend money on an aide or a person that speaks another language, as opposed to spending money on math academy or something. So that's my question to all of us. And we want the school to have individuality, and we want them to do what's best for their particular community. So.
Mr. Preciado, did you want
to? I was going to say, so we set the overall framework for policy, and we leave it up to the individual sites to implement
That's
that
my thought.
Overall framework. And I think so that we don't get into a more in-depth conversation in terms of theory and diving into education philosophy, we have a motion on the table and a second.
I'm fine with asking for the question, calling the question. Please vote.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, no problem.
4 ayes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
So next we move back and get an update on enrollment and the budget impact.
You still remember where you're at?
Okay, so talking about three different things: enrollment, ADA, and funded ADA. So just to kind of define those, enrollment refers to the number of students who are enrolled in school. ADA is their average daily attendance. So you may have a student enrolled in school, but maybe they only attend school 96% of the time, so they're at 0.96 ADA. And then funded ADA is totally separate, and we'll discuss that in a couple minutes. So school districts, funded ADA, though, is made up of the higher of the current year or the prior year's ADA. So that's where it starts to get a little confusing. So whatever the higher is, if this year's ADA is higher than last year, you get funded on this year's ADA. If last year's ADA was higher than this year, you get funded on last year's ADA. So it becomes a little tricky when you're trying to figure out what's the impact of the declining enrollment, but we'll show how that works. Now for this year, your adopted budget just a couple months ago was based on this year's ADA, because there was a projection that this year's ADA was going to be higher. You're going to get higher enrollment and higher students attending. But what has actually happened is enrollment has gone down quite a bit. And so rather than being funded on this higher ADA for this year, you're going to be funded on last year's lower ADA. But fortunately, it's not this year's lower ADA, because this year's ADA looks like it's going to be even much lower than last year. So that's going to hurt for the following year. So let's move on and see exactly how that works. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at both years, because this reduced enrollment and reduced ADA hurts not only this year, but it also hurts next year. It actually hurts next year probably much worse. But let's take a look on how that's going to happen. We have the chart here. We're going to first look at enrollment versus ADA, and then we have another slide where we'll look at ADA versus funded ADA. So in this slide, we have the top where we're showing enrollment. And we're showing that last year's enrollment was 5875, and you're projecting to go up to 5914. Unfortunately, it looks like enrollment has actually gone down to about 5773. That's a 141 student drop in enrollment from what you had projected. Now we go down to the next chart. The next chart is about average daily attendance. Last year's average daily attendance was 5702. Okay, you had enrollment of 5875. You're not going to get as much average daily attendance as you have enrollment, because kids, don't show up every day. They get colds and flu and can't come to school every day. But you had pretty good ADA for the amount of enrollment you had. 5702 is a pretty good ratio there. The adopted ADA, what you thought you were going to get for this year was 5749. You thought you were going to grow to 5749 ADA, but that's not happening. Based on the enrollment that you currently have, it looks like your ADA is going to be about 5600, 5604. That's a pretty dramatic drop of 145 ADA drop. So that's that's pretty costly. And so we'll look here at the next slide to see how costly that is. On this slide, we're going to look at ADA, average daily attendance, versus what's actually the funded ADA. And that'll be the higher of the 2 years. And it's going to flip-flop, because what you projected was for this year to be the higher, but as it turns out, last year it's going to be the higher. So last year's ADA was 5702. It's the first column. Next column over, your projection was 5749. But now it looks like this year is going to be 5604. So that's the ADA change. Now let's look at that bottom chart and look at the funded ADA. What are you going to fund it at? So again, projected ADA for this year, 18-19, was 5749. Your projected funded ADA was the same because you thought this is going to be your high year. But now our ADA is looking like it's going to be about 5604. You see up above, but the funded ADA, we're going to get protected some. We're not going to have to go down to 5604 ADA. We're going to have some protection because we're going to get the higher of the 2 years, so that's going to be that 5702. So we're going to get to rely on that 5702 for our funded ADA this year. So instead of dropping 145 ADA, we're only going to drop 47 in terms of our funded ADA. But that's still going to be costly. It's going to cost you, that's going to be about $400,000 less in revenue this year than what you originally had planned for. So we're okay on that? That's this year, 18-19. Now we're going to go to 19-20, and the numbers are not going to look that good. So again, we're going to same kind of scenario. We're going to look at enrollment and ADA, and then the next slide we're going to look at average daily attendance and funded average daily attendance. So again, up at the top, same format. We're going to look at enrollment. Okay, enrollment for last year, 5875. Remember that. Enrollment projected for this year, 5914. But now we're down looking at about 5773. So our enrollment projection, our enrollment's going down from last year, 5875, to this year, 5773. That's a 140 student drop from projection. And the projection for next year, 2019-20, was over 6,000. Well, if our enrollment's going down, the idea of going up 250 students next year is really unlikely. So that 628 is, you know, unless some miracle happens, that's probably not going to be your enrollment next year.
Pipe dream.
So now that same scenario applies to average daily attendance. Last year, 5702, projected this year, 5749. Actual this year looks like it's going to be right around 5,600. Now the projection for next year was 5829. Higher than any of this. That's very, very, very unlikely. You know, how's that going to happen that all of a sudden you're going to grow by 250 students or grow by over 200 students ADA was? That would be an extraordinary growth. Probably never has happened in this district. So that's what's happening. The ADA was just projected next year at a lot more than what it looks like it's going to come in. Now let's look at the next slide and see what that does for funding for next year. Again, we have the same charts. We have ADA on the top, and then we'll look at funded ADA on the bottom. Okay, ADA again, we have 5702 last year, 5749 projected for this year. It's looking like we're really going to have 5604, not the 5829 that was projected for next, and projected for next year, 5829. Probably not going to happen. So now let's look at funded ADA. The top line there, projected ADA for 2019-20 was originally 5829. And that would have been your funded ADA, because that would have been higher of the 2 years. So your multi-year projection for 19-20, which already didn't look very good, was based on 5829 ADA. What's the actual ADA for next year? We really don't know. At this point, by the time you have your budget study session on that, I'm sure we could come up with an actual projection for ADA for next year, but it would be lower than the ADA for this year, undoubtedly. So your projected funded ADA for next year, though, you're not going to go lower than 5604, because that's the ADA for this year, and so that's the worst it can be for next year in terms of your funded ADA. It can get better, but that's the worst it can be, 5604 for next year, funded ADA. But that's a huge drop from what was projected. The projection was 5829. That's a 225 ADA drop. How much money is that? That's $2,141,000 drop in revenue for next year. That's serious, especially when you were already looking at deficit spending for next year. So, next slide. Let's look at the impact. Remember, a month ago or so, we gave a little presentation on the impact of the state budget, which was not necessarily a good thing for us, or any school district, because it took money from us for the first 2 years. Gives it back in the third year, but the first 2 years are shorter than what was originally projected for schools. So we're going to look at the impact of that, and on top of that, the declining enrollment. So the first part, top part of that chart, we revisit the impact of the state budget. So we show that we had an increase in LCFF money, but a huge decrease in one-time money. So we had an increase of about $360,000 the first year, $380,000 the next year, but a decrease of $900,000 for this year in one-time money. And now we look at the declining enrollment, the impact, $400,000 negative we talked about, the $2.1 million negative that we talked about, and we go over to the totals and we see the total impact over the 2 years of the state, what the state did to you, plus the decline in enrollment, and it's $2.7 million. So we have a long way to go to figure out how we're going to come up with $2.7 million out of our budget. Now one of the things we'll do for next year is project fewer teachers with declining enrollment. So that'll be, fewer teachers to hire. So that will provide some savings, but not enough. And so we'll have to come up with other things that will help to bridge that gap to make sure that you have at least your 3% reserve, if not better. So next, we have other considerations. What are we going to do next? Well, enrollment and ADA have to continue to be carefully monitored. Staffing and other expenditures need to be carefully monitored to guard against additional deficit spending. The projected revenue changes will also impact estimated supplemental concentration allocations, so we'll have to be mindful of that. Preparation for the 1920 budget begins very soon. In fact, I believe a budget study session is even planned for October. So better start sooner than later. You'll probably have to come up with over $2 million in budget reductions, which will be a daunting task. And remember, any budget reductions that you can implement this year will help reduce the burden of implementing budget reductions next year. So as you go through the year and have budget reduction opportunities, certainly take advantage of those. So any questions?
Ms. Crocker and then Mr. Preciado.
Just a couple observations. When planning the budget, you need to plan on the lowest amount that is possible that you might receive rather than the higher amount. And that was not done. And so I think that's where we get into trouble. And then when you do that, you need to have a list of what you're going to plug back in if the state comes up with more money. So that's sort of an automatic kind of thing. It should not be the shock that we have every year. I mean, we need to get our structural budget to a point where it is based there and then we add the extras. So I guess we've got a lot of work to do this year.
Mr. Preciado.
I was going to say to Member Crocker's point, I did want to add that that piece needs to be communicated to us. I mean, there's no, we can't, whatever, it doesn't matter right now in terms of why it wasn't, but it wasn't communicated, so that's the point. So moving forward, your office needs to communicate like these pieces and to Member Crocker's point. So the question I had was, so some of the points are bullet point 2 where you say staffing and other expenditures must be carefully monitored. Can I assume correctly that this will be your office that will be monitoring that?
On the, yes, well.
Second bullet point.
It's a kind of a joint task of our office and other offices as well. And, you know, we as a team, as a cabinet, work together to monitor enrollment and ADA as well as staffing and other expenditures.
Okay, and the reason I asked is just to make sure, like, in terms of, so the board has like a point of contact or like a framework of like, okay, so we're going to be receiving ideas for proposals from either your office or the superintendent's office. That's why I'm asking. I don't know whoever it is, just to be clear on.
It'll be a joint proposal. Anything that the proposals that come to you will be vetted among our cabinet members and come to you as our group proposal.
Thank you.
Mr. Preciado. Mr. Rodriguez. Sorry.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Well, I think all of us who've been in education for at least a few years have gone through these many, many times, and that's kind of the plight of education in California, where our funding is just on a shoestring, and any slight bobble causes a lot of hurt and a lot of effort to try to make ends meet.
Right, that's the frustrating part. And when you have board members that come from outside of education and look at things a little bit differently, and it's hard because, you know, we're 5 and we're trying to do our best as a group to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
But and hashing it out doesn't help us because even though some of us thought that the increase with the additional housing wasn't going to bring any additional kids at all, based on the population that was moving in and the $1 million homes. But yet, education has a format, and you bring in these firms that tell you that you're going to grow by 0.5% children or whatever, and it just sometimes it doesn't happen. So, but we're getting $9,500 approximately per child from the state, and we're hoping that at some point that'll increase. But the fact that we live in an area that, you know, has had declining enrollment since Member Preciado was over at Schilling years ago when we were probably, you know, 7,000 students, 6,500, and then we constantly have gone down. So my question is, when you're doing, and this also to the superintendent, when you're doing projections as far as how many kids you think are going to be coming back. For instance, I noticed at the junior high school that was just, you know, it just seems to be out of whack. And we ask that we always, when we're looking at projections, that we go on the conservative side, which makes it easier as you move forward. And you know, when you're bringing in teachers and staff to take care of the kids that you think are going to be there. So So being that you've been in education, if you're looking at a junior high school model, for instance, you would look at the 7th graders that are going to be going into 8th grade, where you feel how many of those you think are coming back. And then you look at your 6th grade class and see, you know, and so what do you think happened where at the junior high school we were off, you know, let's say 50 kids, where if we would have stayed conservative like the high school and done the same, we wouldn't have that issue. I'm just trying to understand when you're talking about, you know, how many kids are coming back and everything, other than what you feel might be coming in from any housing, just the kids that we have in the schools, you know. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, typically how it's done, now and I'm not sure exactly how it was done in the past, but typically how it's done, you do just kind of what you're saying, you have actual data of kids going from 6th to 7th grade. Over the past 4 years, how many did we lose, or what percentage did we actually increase from 6th to 7th, or did we decline by a percent or 1.5% from 6th to 7th? And you do that for every single grade level. And so you have an actual data on what happens from one year to the next. Now you may have some variance, and so you may do what they call a weighted cohort, where you give the last year more weight than the other years. But that's basically the way that happens. The biggest wild card really in that kind of analysis is the incoming kindergarten and TK group. That can be a bit of a wild card from year to year. But there shouldn't be the kind of huge differences at the middle school level or junior high level, because you should have very, very good data on exactly what percentage you bring in from one year to the next.
Well, if you engage your community, for instance, other than the educational community, and you engage your real estate leaders and everything, and you find out that in the last year, you know, maybe a 1-bedroom apartment went from $1,200 to $1,800 a month. And that's driving people away. So if you have an understanding of what's going on in the community as far as real estate, and it's been kind of crazy the last couple of years, and it's pretty hard to stay, you know, in front of the curve there. But if you do have that dialogue, then you have an understanding what's happening and why people are making decisions to, you know, that they can't stay here anymore, and that you lose kids. So I'm just asking that we have a broader, when we talk other than us educators or the educators, and engage the community, and so you have a better idea of what's going on.
I would also add, we had a little bit of an anomaly at the junior high this year where we had 27 families leave and not notify the junior high.
Crazy.
And that was, you know, I think that's kind of why this conversation about exit interviews is really important, to find out what happened.
Have we talked to them and
We're
found
going
it?
to start chasing them down, but yeah. But that was unusual. That's a high number of families to be leaving.
I would just, are you done?
No, I'm
okay. I would just like to say that we passed a resolution a couple meetings ago where we said that the $550,000 that the state took away, we wanted to have a plan by the first interim report. That was one-time money. So what one-time money can we take out of the budget for this year to make up for this $500K? And now we've got another $400 to $500K because of our declining enrollment. And that's affecting this year's money. So it's almost $1 million this year. And I agree with you that we should be looking at this now rather than later, and as much as we can this year. And also, I think it's going to be important to start negotiating with our NTA and CSEA partners to say what can we do together to hit these big numbers, because to me those numbers are bigger than what we had to cut last year, and last year was a terrible situation for this board to grapple with. In the end, we got some money from the state that we didn't expect in January, and even some more in May, which helped. But it seems like the problem is twice as big for next year as it was last year. So that's my thought. Thank you. Next, we go to 12.2. And do we have anyone? No. Beacon Consulting. Hello. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. Thank you for coming.
I am sorry I did not come last time. I didn't know. I had talked to Sarah with Lowell, and no one said I needed to be here. So I apologize to you in a post that I did not come. Anyway, I decided in light of all these discussions, I'm going to go a bit off my conversation, my PowerPoint. So I have a doctorate in corporate strategy, and I come from the corporate world, and I study industry. And I'm used to going to the treasurer's office and saying, can I have $100 million? That doesn't exist in public education. And so I graduated during the Great Recession, and I got a job at Alameda County Office of Education to provide energy efficiency to Alameda schools, Alameda County schools. And I decided that the biggest problem you have is you have lack of capital funds. If you have capital funds, you can reduce your operating costs, which will put less pressure or at least give you some relief. And so I have been dedicating my time since graduating with my PhD, which doesn't buy you a cup of coffee, to try and work with, and you're not my only client. I mean, I have all my school districts are suffering from the same affluenza, influenza, whatever it is, okay? So let me see, just advance this. So my job, I have a mechanical engineer. He runs around all over your place, fixing things, doing energy efficiency. I spend all my time looking for funds that you do not have the time or the staff or the technical ability to do. I mean, I go and I sit in the library for 4 months to try and figure out how to squeeze more money out of Prop 39. Okay, that's what I do for a living. So we have managed to get you all your Prop 39 funds, and wherever possible, we use it to also improve your infrastructure, which is very badly broken. So you had courtyard lights in the junior high school, and my mechanical engineer put out lights and they didn't work, and he found out those lights were broken for 20 years. Okay, so we fixed them. Okay, so we use the money not only to do the efficiency projects, but to fix things. Okay, we got you more energy audits so that your buildings are evaluated. How can we improve them? So we got $20,000 from the California Energy Commission. We got incentives of 100 and some thousand from PG&E. When we were at Alameda County Office of Education, we got you 7 audits worth $50,000. We got you free garden equipment. And so we have gotten you $1,600,000 of capital. So that's what I regard as our job, and to implement it. Okay? Then they always say in corporate, oh, that was last quarter. What are you doing for me tomorrow? See, at least you don't say that like I had in my corporate life. So I still have $100,000 waiting for shilling. I'm kind of stuck in one of the banking things. And that is to improve the interior lights at that site to be more friendly. Right now, it's really very overlit. It's 100-foot candles at the desk level. Those lights should be between 30 and 50-foot candles. That means the students are getting too much glare. If they have electronic devices, there's too much glare. You get headaches, okay? So that would be one of our projects. The other thing related to that is I need students to intern. I have been begging this school district since I've been working here in 2012. Okay, I've been working for you all since 2012. Where are your students that can work with my engineer or with me? So we just produced a crop of students at Albany High, and they were able to transition right away to a paid internship. in her year between the high school and her college. She's going to University of Chicago. She's doing great, okay? We have college students at Oakland. They've already graduated from college, and they have permanent jobs at PG&E and the utilities. Where are your students? So I am going to pound you. I'm sorry. I am on a podium, so I get to pontificate, right? Okay, so the other thing is I just now get to work with Miss Susan over here, who came out of the transportation side. And there is a lot of money for your buses. You have 2 diesel buses. They fumes galore, okay? You have 3 compressed natural gas buses. They're old. They need a lot of repairs. I think I can get you 5 brand new electrical vehicle buses. And I can get you the infrastructure to plug them in. Now, there may be other things that I need to do. I may need to put power in. I may need to be, those are some things that you have to pay for. But nonetheless, you will have brand new buses that will not pollute, that will not poison your students and your workers. Because that was really with the garden equipment. I have a lot of garden equipment at UC Berkeley. I gave them about $100,000 worth of garden equipment, and they say the best things is they can run them during the day without disturbing the students. They don't have repetitive motion thing, when you pull to start whatever the machine is, and they are not breathing bad gas, okay? And I have been working on for years Prop 1, which is water, to do leak detection repair. So my first leak detection repair was here at Newark Junior High School. I saved a ton load of money, and we should continue that, but I plan to do it in a broader multi-county project, and I would include you guys in that, should you want to continue with me. So if you want to continue with me, I would like my MOU signed. If you don't want to continue with me, I'll sneak my help to Susan on the side. Okay, just don't tell too many people. Okay, so I don't really want to spend a lot of time on the slides because I have to get to Albany. So I've summarized it all. And so if you look at, so basically, I am saving you between about $225,000 to $270,000 every year in the energy projects and water projects we've completed. So that is money that you can count in your operating budget that would not be there if we did not do our work. Okay, and I don't count garden equipment and buses because that's really not part of, we're just doing that extra. And so the detail to all that is in the pages that follow. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can kind of look and see what we've done. And there you can see the leak repair we did where the water units really drop off.
Why is it going up?
It's going down.
No, the last 3 years.
The last year is because she sprang another leak.
It wasn't my fault.
She got another leak at the junior high school pool. Okay. But she already has me working on that. Another one on the side. So anyway, and McGregor, if I get the Prop 1 money for you, I want to put in smart irrigation controllers. I just did a huge project at Sunol Glen Unified. It's beautiful. Cost me a lot of money. I got the money from SFPUC, so I can't get that same money for you. But, once I get them going, then it will start to really save you money.
That's McGregor Park there's a potential MOU with the city to start paying for the water.
Well, so you don't have to pay for it at all then?
No, we won't have to pay for it at all. The city will. So if you're doing improvements there, they'll accrue to the benefit.
Okay. Well, then we'll just put in another one. We'll move it around. I don't really care.
Well, so will the environment, so I think we can.
I'd like to address that too, and that is the fact that talking with the city, it costs them much less money to buy the water, to buy replacement water, if you dig your own well.
Yes.
So is there some way that you can find money to dig a well for all of if we can combine with the city's rate is so much lower than ours.
So there's a problem with wells in California. I don't know if you know, if you go down the Central Valley, we have dug so much water out of the ground. It is now 15 feet where it used to be. So the bridges are breaking, the structures are breaking. So there is now a new rule that's been passed that we can't just with wild abandon dig wells and pump them. So it is a different environmental issue. And so it's not one that I have funding for. I do have funding for leak detection and repair and irrigation controls. So I only can do things for which I can find funding. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. My thought is that this was from someone who's on the water board stating that if there's MOUs you can have with the city.
Okay. Well,
because we have common usage with our land in terms of the use of community groups.
Right.
And apparently the water structure, rate structure, is such that cities pay very little money.
well, I mean, a lot of cities and schools work together where they have shared pools, shared parks,
Right,
et cetera.
right.
But that is not where I've been going. There's just been a big push, both for the EV buses and for water. That's all I can go. I can't go where I can't go and not get money.
Thank you.
So anyway, so my future work, my engineer will be the rest of the elementary schools, the stadium lights that will make Mr. Sanchez very happy, right? Okay. The electric buses, and I've been helping Susan with an irrigation leak that she has, and you also have it over the SFPUC Hetch Hetchy pipes, and that is really a significant issue. And then irrigation controls, but I'll drop out McGregor Park. Okay?
Yeah. Why are we doing Hetch Hetchy pipe?
You have a license that you pay $0 for to use the grounds behind Birch Grove Primary. And therefore, anything that you do that might harm the pipes that were in there from the 1920s, and your license agreement started in the 1960s, because I actually read it, you have an obligation, if they feel it's going to hurt their pipes, to remove it or mitigate it. And the only thing that makes me worried, okay, I come out of corporate, if there is a pipe breakage, it will drown the city of Newark in 15 minutes. That keeps me up at night, okay, if I were sitting on your side, because that is a huge liability. So we started working on the leak detection with them, with Lowell's and Susan's permission, but I just would suggest that maybe some more steps should be taken, because they can cancel that agreement in a moment's notice, and that's it. Because it's really their unfettered right to do with their land as they choose. So that's another one that I'm sort of working on.
I have are you done yet?
Yeah, so that is it. So I would like your interns. And the reason we are really extending our amending this lease is originally it was supposed to end in 2018. But the CEC and Prop 39 extended it to 2021, where we do your reports. And I need Puck, my licensed mechanical engineer, to keep signing off on those reports, or you get to find someone else to sign off on those reports. But that's the reason why I did make it to match up to Prop 39. Okay, so that's really the reason why I'm doing this whole thing.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. You talk about doing a baseline study of our energy use. We were recently talking about replacing quite a few of our HVAC units, and I assume they are more efficient. Plus, we already put in that big monitoring system that I hope we're using to turn down the heat at night and turn out the lights and things like that. My question is that baseline calculation, if we add energy efficiency things out of our Measure G, that you shouldn't be getting credit for the savings on that, should you? And how do you figure that out?
So what we do is we know in advance. if we do, like, let's say we did the parking lots at the high school, we know exactly how much energy that's going to produce in savings, because we know we're going from 500 watts to 100. And we know it's 365 days a year, and so my engineer does all the calculations. He sends them off to the CEC, California Energy Commission. They have engineers who say, yes, 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 we agree with that. And then all the reports go back and forth. So every one of the engineer type, who are all licensed, say, yes, we agree with those numbers. So that is how we calculate our savings.
So, and the same thing with the HVAC savings.
So on the HVAC, the reason you got most of the $100,000 of incentives was our engineer was able to tag on to PG&E using your EMS money from Bond G, and we were able to get a huge incentive out of that. And so we figured, okay, we were responsible for some of it, not entirely. And what I would like when my engineer is ever free, okay, and we just picked up another customer, so that's a little hard, is I would like him to work with your staff on managing the energy management system. Oh, please. Because that is how, because I'm a little worried about the high school. It seems to be trailing up, because I actually do read the data. I really am very good at quantitative analysis. And so I can see everything else is trending down, but that high school is and I don't know why. And so I'm trying to figure it out.
It's all the microwaves in the classrooms.
I'm not going to go there. I already heard about it.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Because it's 9:30 and I kept telling my son I'd be home.
Maybe this is a later discussion that we can have. I definitely am interested in learning more about if there's opportunities for solar and implementation of solar and longer term energy savings through implementation of solar. Maybe there's grants or something. So that could be a later discussion.
So what we're waiting for is a lot of schools did not have technical people to design and implement Prop 39. So there's a lot of money left over. So for each school that we're working with, we have ready in the drawer the minute they release those funds to apply.
Great.
So, so we can do the analysis. We can, if solar is what you want, it's possible. The other thing we were thinking, I was just talking to our engineer, is that if we pull in those electric buses, then we may, I don't want to pull in a whole PG&E feed, and maybe we should put solar there.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that's, so we've been thinking.
Thank you, I'm glad it's on your mind.
Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please vote. Four ayes.
You're
Thank you very
approved.
much.
You're not going anywhere.
We've got you for the next 5 years.
Right, you're not going anywhere.
Okay. I will keep hunting for funds for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay,
Through the
next,
21st, it's only 3 more years.
next we move on to 3.1, the unaudited actuals, and we have 2 speakers.
13.1.
13.1.
13.1, yes. Mr. Knoop?
I just have a quick question about one of the funds, the Adult Ed Fund. You know, I could have sworn that well, not could have sworn, but I knew that there was 58K in the negative when the estimated close was out. And the equity was minus 11,000 and something. And now I see that the fund ends in the positive and the equity is plus 29 and a half. So I'm just curious what happened there.
Let's wait, this is public comment.
Okay.
Well, maybe a board member can ask the same question that I asked. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Parks?
This is going to be one of those, huh? I was going to ask the same thing as Mr. Noob about the adult ed, because even when you did the budget in June, the budget in June showed a transfer in of $36,645. So just between June and now, we got changes. You know, one of the things that I really went through this time was the money that's left in your grants. And, you know, you're down to your last nickels and dimes here. So I would think that you would be utilizing your grant money to the most effective way that you can. And I'm not even sure I know what this is, because definitely I know that there were some that I brought up last year that I wasn't even sure what some of them are, and I'm not even going to go down that road again. My whole point is that you have grant money that's sitting here and it doesn't seem that you're spending it, that it's rolling over. And I'll give you one example, and I don't know if this has anything to do with Yvonne, but it's called the CA Clean Energy. Your ending balance was 500, or prior year restricted ending balance was 529,259.37. Your current year award is 318,229, and your it says your restricted ending balance is 508,488. Then it's for your E3. It looks like you had. I guess you didn't spend all that you got in the grant. So now, and it's in parentheses. I'm assuming that that's money you're having to kick back, because you didn't spend it all. I know that this is the last year of the E3, that's why I'm assuming that that's what it is. But, you know, again, the whole point here is you're getting these grants, and instead of the money just sitting there, there's instructional lottery money. Just, if you're getting the money, you should be spending it. That's what the money comes in. It's just like with site councils. When we were on it every year, we were always told, spend what you're getting. It's supposed to be spent on this year's kids. And again, that's what you should be doing with your grant money, is you should be spending it on the kids for that year. And hopefully we'll get an answer if you don't know.
Okay. Staff?
Are you asking those questions?
Oh.
No, I'm asking him for his narrative or presentation. Are you going to give us a presentation on this?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah. No, I was just asking when we're here.
This one's not a PowerPoint. Should be a report in there. I don't have the attachments. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. So we'll just go with
The narrative is on.
just the narrative.
Yeah, it is on.
Okay. So we can just go through the narrative. Can everybody get to that?
I've got
Or I
it.
can just do it without that. Or we'll do the not the 6 megabyte one, the small one.
To the right.
Okay. So in terms of the unaudited actuals, I'm going to have a little better news than I had with the enrollment report. So that's good. And just to looking at the first thing we look at when we after we finalize the unaudited actuals is we look at, you know, how did this year do versus last year? And on the surface, you would say, well, our ending balance went up from, you know, 2.9 million in 16-17 to 4.2 million in 17-18. So we went, you know, that looked good, but that's really masked, and we highlight that in our narrative and say you have to remember that we moved $3 million from Fund 17, that Russian money that was moved over to Fund 17. We moved $3 million of that into the general fund last year. And so really our ending balance would have gone down by 1.7 million, or gone down, yes, by 1.7 million rather than going up by 1.3 million. So last year we had a lot more expenditure, a lot more, our revenues went down and our expenditures didn't go down much. And so that kind of, we had deficit spending that was kind of masked by that transfer of the $3 million in from Fund 17. So that's kind of the big picture of how we did last year in terms of the general fund.
Could I make a comment on that?
Sure.
The year before, when knew we were facing a big deficit, the board specifically decided to not make cuts that year, but to spend a good amount of time designing and deciding on the cuts. And that's all the work we did last year that went into this year. So the board made it a deliberate decision to take money out of Fund 17 last year so that we could start this year with a clean slate, which we thought we were doing. But if we didn't spend 1.3 million, did you say, out of the 3 million, how much?
Yes.
Shouldn't that money go back into
You
Fund
could.
17?
You
Because
could. That'll be part of the discussion, I think, in terms of what to do about 18, 19, 19, 20.
Okay.
So next, we looked at some of the financial components of revenues, and last year was fairly stable. Like you'd mentioned before, you got a little bit of uptick in funding from the state, but it wasn't real significant. It was, years past we've had some very unstable funding years, and this past year was fairly stable funding from the state, so that was reasonably good news. Next, we look at where are we getting our revenues, and for the unrestricted general fund, 95% of our revenues come from the LCFF calculation. So we get, 2% of our unrestricted revenues come from other local sources, only 3% from other state revenues, like the lottery and others, 95% from LCFF. So in terms of the total general fund, LCFF accounts for about 70% of our total funding, because you have you have some federal money coming in, you have more other state monies coming in from other state grants. You have quite a bit coming in from other local revenues. That's a little bit misleading because your special ed money here comes in technically from other local, because you're part of the SELPA, and the SELPA gives you the money, where really they're just getting it from the state and transferring it to you. We have some of the required information that about the Education Protection Act account, the EPA, that we have to report each year. And some people think that's extra money that comes to us from the proposition that increased taxes and created this EPA account. And really, it's a sleight of hand move by the state, because for every dollar they give you from the EPA account, they take it back from the other side. So it's just money that the state uses to fund education. It does not provide one extra nickel of money for schools. Next, we go on to general fund expenditures, and the highlight here is that salaries and benefits make up 89% of your unrestricted general fund. Now, your unrestricted general fund is all your money that when you're talking about cutting that you're going to have to do, it's coming from the unrestricted general fund. You can't really cut restricted programs, because if you cut that, then the money goes away. So what you have to cut is all out of this unrestricted pot of money, and 89% of those expenditures are all people, salaries and benefits. So that's what makes it really tough. You have only 3% of it is books and supplies, only 8% is services like utilities, insurance, that sort of thing. So then you have, we show a graph of the total general fund, and you have lots of other services and actually not as many books and supplies, but a lot more services out of the restricted side of the general fund. Big contributor to that is special ed transportation. But again, that's the restricted part of the general fund are things like special ed and Title I and all those types of things. Next, we go on to contributions and transfers to restricted programs, because restricted programs don't pay for themselves. Special ed doesn't pay for itself. You contributed last year $6.7 million to special ed out of your unrestricted monies, which was down from the prior year. Prior year was 7.1 million. So that was good that special ed's getting a little closer to their funding amount there. So relying less so on the unrestricted general fund. Your routine restricted maintenance account, that's eventually will have to be 3%. You actually contributed a little bit less last year, 1.2 million, than you did the prior year, 1.3. But eventually the state will require that you contribute 3%, which will be closer to 1.9 million.
I thought we did 3%, but that 15% we were able to show that we were spending that on custodians who do maintenance. That's not
even with that, you're not up to 3%.
Really?
Right. Even for this year, for 18-19. Some other, I don't have, I didn't put in here anything about the changes from estimated actuals for the adult ed fund, but I do show the difference between the estimated actuals and the unaudited actuals for the general fund. And you came out, very, very close. Overall, your ending balance ended up about $300,000 or $466,000 more than what was estimated back when you did the adopted budget back in June. So that was a good thing. So that gives you $466,000 more one-time money that can help to at least put a dent in some of those cuts that you were talking about. Like you were talking about this year needing to come up with that $560,000 in one-time money. Where are we going to get that? Well, here's $466,000 of it right here.
Where is that showing up? I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
It's
the bottom of page 4.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the highlight there. That's the good news that I had for you.
Right. That's the money that I was saying should go back to Fund 17 because we were deficit spending.
So.
Or was money that we planned to spend on this year's kids and we didn't.
Yeah. Well, you're always, your budgeting is the maximum when you're telling your departments and schools, this is the most you can spend. And so to expect every single one of them to spend up to the absolute top that they can spend, maybe if they had a boatload of bubble gum they could buy, they could
well,
they could do the exact amount, but it's
it's positions that aren't filled, for example.
Yeah. That's why we carry money over. That's why it's allowable to carry money over, because you want to spend smartly, not just the whole thing. So our general fund ending balance summary, again, 4.2 million unrestricted, plus you had about 1.8 million in restricted ending balances among all of your various sources. And some of those you don't want to spend all of them. You want to hold on to some. So your fund summaries, this is similar to what we showed in the capital improvement presentation, showing your ending balances for the funds. We also show the net fund activity for each of the funds. So that's the report on what's called the unaudited actuals, and they're unaudited because our auditors are still in the process of auditing last year's transactions, and they are coming out in October to do their final review, and they will have a report ready for you by December 15th.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we approve 13.1.
Please vote. 4 ayes, thank you.
Thank you all. I like the summary. That was very helpful.
Yes, thank you. 13.2, the GAN limit adoption resolution.
Second.
Wait, I have to close and just, can we do that again? Close. Okay, please vote. Four ayes, thank you. Next, we go to 13.3.
So I'll move to approve.
Second.
Excuse me.
Please vote.
Member Clark gets
That's right.
coughing.
4 ayes, thank you. 13.4.
I move acceptance.
I'll second.
Please vote. Four ayes, thank you. 13.5, donations report.
Move acceptance.
Second.
Please vote.
Can I read it?
Okay, would you like to read that for me, please?
Sure. So donation $500 for Graham Elementary. The donor is the Gansey Davis Family Trust, CO Joan Davis, and specified purpose, library books.
Thank you. 13.6 is the first reading, so unless there's a reason to vote and approve it, we will just see if there's any discussion or questions. Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring that back for a second reading at the next meeting. 13.7, Big Ideas Math Purchase.
Move acceptance.
I will second.
Been moved and seconded. Please vote. 4 ayes, thank you. We have a speaker on 13.8, Ms. McMillan.
I'm just really glad to see this on the agenda, and I know how desperate we are to fill the spots that we have in special ed. So I'm really hoping that this vote goes through. She's an excellent educator, and I'm glad that we're able to retain her this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Please vote. Four ayes. Thank you for staying, Ms. McMillan. Okay, next, employee organizations. CSEA.
Our distinguished guest. Not a guest.
I just wanted to kind of report that we had our benefit fair this last Saturday. And so I felt it was very successful. It went very smooth. Maria Huffer did a wonderful job, and we had four professional growth classes given, as well as vendors coming in, such as Delta Dental, all the benefits that CSCA provides. CVT had a representative there. And so we had probably about 40 to 50 people, as well as the representatives from all the different organizations. So I was really, really pleased with that. And it's a great benefit to our employees for them to be able to come in, ask questions, get answers, know what's available to them, so as well as getting professional growth. What will be coming up this next month is we'll be taking nominations for the different offices in the CSCA 208 chapter. So the seats that we have is President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and not job steward. I can't think of the other one. But anyway, they're 2-year seats, so they are up. So when I came in, I took the end of Susan's spot for her 2 years. And so we'll be dealing with elections coming up for the next 2 years. So that is something that we're looking forward to. So that's kind of where we're at. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we move on to consent agenda, personnel items. We have a speaker for 15.1, Ms. Parks.
Hi. On section number 1, the employment duties and obligations, the first line is just awfully repetitive. I just was wondering if this is the proper way to delineate this language here. And then I just didn't understand, towards the end of it, it says that the district hereby designates and resolves that the chief technology officer is classified as a senior management of the classified service. Is that a correct rendering of, or was that a typographical error?
Yeah, I think that's a typo, and I think I would hope that we would entertain a motion with that minor correction.
Oh, we gotta let her, she still has 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I thought
so
you were
that was-
finished.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it, yeah. I just wasn't sure if that was a typo or if I was misunderstanding what it was saying.
I'll make the motion with the fixing typo that we approve it.
I'll second.
Okay. Please vote.
See, where's mine?
4 ayes, thank you.
I didn't vote on that one.
Huh?
I couldn't get to the voting thing. How did you get 4 ayes?
Oh, I looked up there and
Better do it again.
I'll do it again.
Sorry about that. All right. Wasn't that I wouldn't vote.
Okay, 4 ayes, thank you. Welcome to our district. You want to say a few words?
Can you allow the
We've got 5
superintendent to
minutes.
introduce him? If that's okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Sanchez. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be part of the Newark Unified School District family. I realize that there are some challenges ahead, and I'm sure we'll be able to get through them together. And I'm looking forward to working with everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Superintendent, did you want to say something? Because I know you usually do.
Yeah, no, I
introduce
definitely, I think we're lucky to have Kai. I know he's from the area and he's coming home.
Yes.
And he has moved home already. We are hiring you for CBO, not Chief Technology Officer. I caught that in the prior version, but for some reason in the last version, it got skipped, so that's easy to correct. But I want to make sure you know that's what you're signing up for. But just in our short time together, I feel that you've really, well, I guess what I would say that I like that I see already is you're spending time listening and trying to really just get a feel for the culture, and I think that's really smart. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanchez. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next, thank you. Next, we move on to 15.2, and Ms. Parks would like to speak to this.
Put on Letty's computer.
So I just have a question regarding the some of the terminology where it says employment of certificated employees in a temporary position. I know that I see these reports come through. You have some people that are hired in temporary. I know that at the end of the year, then they're let go so they can be rehired. I know that that was when when I was on site council, that was the way sometimes it was with, positions that were hired under site council because the next council couldn't change who they're hiring. I guess what I would really like to know is the employment of certificated employees in a temporary position. Nothing to do with the people that are on here, but just exactly what that means. I mean, does this
mean that these people are teachers themselves. And I mean, I know Alyssa, you know, and going along with Megan, very happy that she will be over at Lincoln. Yeah, good for Lincoln. But just wanting to know what that means as far as what these people are classified as.
Excuse me, before we need to move to extend the meeting by at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to extend the
I move
meeting.
to extend it until 10:15.
Second.
Please vote.
Thank you. Sorry, Mrs. Parks.
No, you can talk more.
Anyhow, just if I could get a explanation of what that means, I mean, are they, when it says that they're certificated, I mean, does that mean that they are, you know, I think when you say certificated, it's somebody who is a teacher, and then in a temporary position, I take it then it means that at the end of the year, or what, I mean, just to know what that means.
You know, the board president can ask if staff is able to answer that quickly. Would you like to, please?
Can we please, as a process, give her the full minute if she...
Oh, that's all I have was, I just didn't understand what that means.
Okay, so she's done with her time, so I just want to make sure that you're not cutting.
Thank you, Mr. Preciado, yes.
As I just did.
Hi. So yes, that's exactly what it means, even though these are certificated positions, because in some cases they haven't completed the credentials. They're going through exams and different things that they still need to complete. They are called certificated temporary teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move on to...
We have to vote on that?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Please vote. Four ayes, thank you.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I think it's good that we've approved. Actually, this is really more for the prior, so I'll wait till the end. I'm sorry. I'll wait till my comments.
Okay. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. But I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, 16.1. I'll move to approve.
Well, can you do the whole thing, both of them?
Oh, I'll move to approve 16.1 to 16.2.
I second.
Okay, please vote. Four ayes, thank you. Next, we move on to committee reports, announcements, requests, debrief, and discussion. This time, I think I'll start with the superintendent. Although you are on it at 18.1. Do you mind if I have the superintendent?
Why don't we just do our stuff and then let him have our last word?
Go ahead. I'll do mine last. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez?
No, just excited about Newark Days and thanking staff for everything that's been done for the beginning of school. I completely forgot, now that I have two grandchildren in kindergarten, that they stay in the same classroom for the first, 2 or 3 weeks before they move. And having the parents that are so excited that we have a full day of kindergarten, as opposed to years ago when we only had a half day. So in spite of the fact that we have declining enrollment, I hear nothing but excellent reports on the new principals that we hired at different sites, and the great things that are happening at each one of our sites. And I had a chance to visit the high school and talk to our new principal there, and it's being well received. And we have excellent people in our schools that are very warm when it comes to welcoming people that come from outside, and it's part of what we're about, I think. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Crawford?
Yes, I just have a question. Shar, what is the date of the city meeting? It's in October, right?
Monday, October the 15th.
15th, thank you. So we'll be meeting at that point. So if you've got any input that you have that you'd like to have for the liaison committee between the school district and the city. Other than that, I have nothing else to say.
So I want to say I look forward to the strategic plan development and having the conversations and seeing the final product that is produced with the strategic plan. I also wanted to, so I don't think we do this often enough. I wanted to thank Superintendent Sanchez and the leadership team for all of your hard work, and I appreciate your commitment to focusing on ensuring the success of our students.
Thank you. Before you go, President Thomas, can I just add something real quick?
Sure.
Our chief business official that's been helping us on an interim basis, I wanted to thank you for stepping in and for everything you've done and kind of helping us move forward and helping our superintendent. And I had a question of Superintendent Sanchez is, with the new CBO coming in, are we going to transition period here, or how do we do that?
For as long as possible. We're going to try to hang on to Lowell to her transitioning, especially on some special projects that we started together. So he'll be holding on to a couple things that I think are just really fragile that we need to pay attention to. So yes.
Yeah, well, that's taking advantage of Lowell's experience too, which is
absolutely
great. And he's good communication skills. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to piggyback off of that and thank you so much. Your presentations tonight were just spot on in terms of what the board needs to understand the situation that we're in, and I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
So I'm looking forward to the agendizing of the Measure G budget and your staff recommendations so that we can get that money and those projects underway. And I wanted to clarify that the board, we haven't had any discussions about topics like the new school or closing schools and I think, you know, for me, I'm looking forward to the facilities master plan and talking to members of the community and getting their input. But of course, I have my own personal thoughts. I've mentioned closing schools because of our budget situation. I'm looking forward to the facilities master plan. You know, maybe talking about what a good idea it would be to move out of this antiquated facility into something that will meet the needs of staff better. But I think it's important for the public to know that we board members have not had any discussions about these types of topics, and I think we've been very transparent in the way we've approached our work, and so I'd like to make that comment.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, the pieces that we have discussed that have been in public in full view, and it's been beginning from what I mentioned about the affordable housing and the several story units of affordable housing for staff, but that's my last pitch. We've had those types of conversations.
It's all been public.
It's been public, so we have discussed it, but in that setting.
But we've made no decision, and there is no secret plan to move ahead with the new school or to close schools or anything like that. You know, but if we need to bring them up, and we need to have those discussions in context, I think, of the ADIS study. So, Superintendent.
Thank you. A couple of comments. First of all, I want the board and the community to know that I definitely am going to be reflecting and have been reflecting deeply on what's the process going to be, looking at the budgetary forecast and what's that going to look like that's going to be different this year. I think transparency is definitely important, and I think communication is going to be important. So I'm wrestling with both of those concepts, but just know that it weighs heavily on me, and I want to make sure that you guys hear that. So it'll look different. It'll look different, and I largely will lean into some of the comments and criticisms. I think we have to be able to hear that and take it and still move forward. So just know that's something that weighs heavily on my mind, and I'm coming to formulate some things I think will help everyone be involved with how do we come to those decisions in a way that is reasonable and fair and still helps students. So I want to just say that and have it in the record. I think the last thing I want to end with is, without revealing anything, I really do encourage you all to be at the study session with the students. I promise you it's going to be a really powerful experience for everybody. I mean, for the students, for us, for the community.
I'm sorry, Superintendent, is there any way you can put it off? Because I'm having the knee surgery and it's going to be within 2 weeks. I mean, I'm still going to do my best to be here.
We can stream it for you so you can see it. Okay. I think that, but we are not going to just do one.
Right. We're
going to do more than one. They're so excited, I don't think they could wait any longer.
No, I think it's great.
But, no,
Remember
definitely.
We were at the high school together, so I think.
Yeah, it's the same group of leadership, and I think that,
And the date on that again is?
October 2nd, 5 to 6 p.m. If you can be here, I think that'd be great. We will stream it, but I think that, I know the kids are very excited and they're working, the other day they worked 6 hours on it.
Yeah.
So they're very excited. So that's about all. Thank you.
Okay. So without further ado,
Very good.
adjourned.